Imagine for a moment everything you struggle with: fears, doubts, repressed desires. These are not simply obstacles, but keys to understanding your true nature. What if, in the shadowy corners of your consciousness, the answers to the deepest questions are hidden? Who are you really, and what is your calling? We are accustomed to avoiding these parts of ourselves, pushing them away, not acknowledging them, fearing that they will make us weak or expose us before the world. But what if our true strength is hidden in this? Carl Jung, the founder of depth psychology, spoke of the shadow as the part of the personality that we reject because it does not conform to our self-image. In it live repressed emotions, desires, and character traits that society or our upbringing has labeled as unacceptable. However, the paradox is that this shadow holds enormous potential. It contains energy that can be learned to manage, transforming it from a source of fear into a resource for personal growth. Consider how often you are annoyed by others for what you unconsciously reject in yourself. For example, if you dislike people who are too loud about themselves, perhaps deep down you also want to be heard, but you do not allow yourself to be. If someone's confidence angers you, perhaps you have suppressed your own desire for self-expression. Jung said that everything that irritates us in others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Our shadow always strives to be noticed, even if we stubbornly try not to see it. But what if we stop fearing our shadow and start working with it? True transformation is hidden in this. Awareness and integration of the shadow aspects of personality allow you to gain wholeness. Fear can become a motivator for development, aggression a force for overcoming difficulties, envy an indicator of true desires. When we stop running away from these parts of ourselves, we gain the freedom to be authentic. So, if something bothers you in yourself or in others, do not rush to dismiss it. Ask yourself, what exactly touches me so much? What is my shadow trying to tell me? The most important answer in your life may be hidden in these questions. Do not be afraid to look inside. There, behind the fears and doubts, perhaps your true strength awaits. Carl Jung argued that accepting one's shadow is the key to true transformation. But what does this mean in practice? It means that we must look in the face those parts of ourselves that we would prefer to forget, hide, or deny. We build masks all our lives, trying to appear better, trying to meet the expectations of society, family, and friends. But in these masks, no matter how beautiful they are, there is no real life. True energy and true freedom lie in allowing yourself to be whole, integrating both light and shadow. Jung called this process individuation, a journey to the authentic self, going beyond the narrow framework of imposed roles. This is the path of the hero, and everyone who decides to face their shadow embarks on it. If you think about it, in all-world mythology, heroes meet their reflection in the dark. Hercules fought not only with monsters, but also with his own rage. Luke Skywalker in Star Wars had to admit that the dark side also lives in him in order to ultimately gain strength. Batman, a man whose strength was born out of fear, shows us how to go our way. But let us descend from the level of philosophy to the level of real life. How does this manifest in us? Every time we are annoyed by someone else's behavior, when we are overwhelmed by inexplicable anger or envy, when we feel an internal conflict, this indicates that our shadow wants to be heard. For example, if someone else's audacity drives you crazy, perhaps deep down you forbid yourself to be more assertive. If someone else's wealth and success touch you, perhaps you have suppressed your own ambitions. Working with the shadow begins with awareness. You need to learn to notice your reactions, not suppress emotions, but study them. Instead of immediately judging someone for their behavior, you can ask yourself why this affects me so much. What does this say about me? The answers to these questions can be unexpected and even unpleasant, but they will open the way to true self-understanding. But awareness is only the first step. The next is acceptance. This does not mean that you need to allow the shadow to control you. It means recognizing its existence without shame or fear. It means saying to yourself, yes, there is anger in me, there is envy in me, there is fear in me, but this does not make me a bad person. These are just parts of me, and I can understand them and use them for good. For example, if you realize that aggression is hidden inside you, instead of suppressing it, you can direct this energy into sports, into art, into active activities. It is acceptance that gives an incredible sense of freedom. You no longer need to hide from yourself or from the world. You cease to be a hostage to other people's expectations because you know who you are. You stop fearing your weaknesses because you see a resource in them. True confidence is not fearlessness, but the ability to move forward even while realizing your fears. Immersing yourself in the secrets of your own shadow, we make one of the most exciting journeys, a journey inside ourselves. It can be frightening because meeting what has long remained hidden requires courage. But as Jung said, a person does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by realizing darkness. Only by facing what we have hidden from ourselves can we understand who we are. Consider how often you have suppressed your emotions, hidden your true desires, or refused to recognize those parts of yourself that seemed inappropriate. We are taught to conform, to be convenient, to fit into frameworks, and in this process, we often lose ourselves. However, the shadow does not disappear anywhere. It continues to manifest in people who annoy us. Everything that causes us strong emotions can be the key to understanding hidden aspects of our personality. Imagine that your most violent emotions are messages from your shadow. Anger can be suppressed energy for action. Envy can indicate your true but unrecognized desires. Fear can be a signal for growth. We are used to fighting these feelings, but what if, instead, we try to decipher them? One of the most powerful tools of self-knowledge is projection. Jung explained that we tend to see in others those qualities that we reject in ourselves. If someone else's self-confidence irritates you, perhaps you're suppressing your desire to be confident. If someone else's aggression angers you, perhaps you do not allow yourself to express your own boundaries. The world becomes a mirror reflecting our invisible sides, but instead of fighting these reflections, we can use them as clues for self-knowledge. Let us take a step further. How is the shadow connected with our purpose? Often, it is precisely what we suppress that is the key to our true nature. Imagine a person who loved to draw as a child, but was instilled with the idea that art is not serious. He rejected his creative side, but now every time he encounters artists or people who freely express themselves, he experiences either admiration or irritation. His shadow speaks to him, reminding him of a forgotten part of his soul. Likewise, in your life, consider what desires or talents you have rejected, what dreams seem too daring to you. Perhaps it is in these dark corners that your path is hidden. Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you really are. This does not mean becoming ideal. It means becoming whole. Start with the simple. Observe your reactions. Record the moments when something touches you, and ask yourself what this says about me. Give voice to those parts of yourself that you did not listen to before. Allow your shadow not to frighten you, but to lead you to understanding, because ultimately it is not an enemy, but a guide pointing the way to the real you. Working with the shadow is not just a psychological practice, but a true art of self-knowledge. This is a path on which you learn not only to see yourself completely, but also to use your inner strength to transform your life. Keeping a journal becomes one of the most accessible and powerful tools on this path. Jung himself kept extensive records, capturing his thoughts, experiences, and dreams, understanding that paper can become a mirror of the soul. When you write down your dreams, emotions, or recurring scenarios in life, you are like laying out a step towards understanding your deepest essence. But the shadow does not speak to us in plain text. She communicates through symbols, subconscious impulses, and even through relationships with others. Sometimes it manifests in the form of unexpected emotional outbursts, sometimes in the form of projections onto other people. It is important to learn to notice these signs. Imagine that you live in a house with a secret room, the door to which has been locked for years. Everything that was once rejected by you is stored there. Fears, desires, repressed emotions. If you never look inside, these shadows will appear in your life at unexpected moments, taking different forms. But if you find the key, open the door, and look inside, you will discover not only what seemed scary, but also hidden treasures. Integrating the shadow does not mean allowing your fears to control you. It means recognizing them, accepting them, and using their energy constructively. This is like an artist who understands light and shadow, who creates contrast and harmony. A person who accepts their shadow becomes more whole, more alive. He no longer spends energy suppressing himself, but directs it to creativity, growth, and interaction with the world. This process changes not only your inner life, but also your connections with those around you. Having accepted your own shadows, you become less inclined to judge others. More compassion and depth arise in relationships. You realize that everyone carries their shadow, their burden, their secret fears and desires. Instead of fighting this, you learn to see the human in them and build deeper and more sincere connections. But the most important discovery is that working with the shadow is directly related to your purpose. Often, what we suppress in ourselves contains the key to our true path. Someone hides their rebellious spirit all their life because from childhood they were told to be obedient. However, the moment comes when they realize that their unwillingness to accept imposed norms is not a flaw, but a source of strength. Another, on the contrary, carefully hides their vulnerability out of fear that they will be condemned. But it is in this sensitivity, in this ability to empathize with others, that the source of their true calling is hidden. When you begin to work with your shadow, you not only heal your wounds, but also uncover your true strength. And here is the main truth. Your path of self-knowledge is not only your personal process. Jung believed that by becoming more aware, we influence the collective unconscious, contributing to the development of all humanity. Everyone who dares to look into their shadow becomes a conductor of light, not only for themselves, but also for others. Therefore, this path is not just working on yourself. It is a contribution to the world. Try to imagine your shadow as an old, unfamiliar friend who has long wanted to speak. How would you communicate with him? Perhaps through a diary in which you write a dialogue with this side of yourself, or even in a mental conversation in which you ask what you want, what you are trying to teach me. Sometimes the deepest insights come precisely when we stop fighting and start listening. One of the most powerful ways to work with the shadow is creative expression, writing, music, dance, any forms that allow you to splash out what has long remained hidden. History knows many examples when great artists drew inspiration from their shadow, turning inner chaos into masterpieces. Recall Van Gogh, who expressed the struggle of his soul through his canvases, or writers who created characters embodying their own fears and desires. Your art, whatever it may be, can become a window into your inner world. Another important step in integrating the shadow is bodily awareness. Our repressed emotions often manifest in the body. For example, unexpressed anger can turn into tension in the neck or back. Suppressed sadness can manifest as fatigue. Simple exercises, breathing practices, and just conscious movement help to relieve accumulated tension. Sometimes the shadow speaks to us through physical sensations, and if you learn to hear it at this level, you can understand yourself more deeply. In addition to working on yourself, it is important to consider the influence of the shadow in relationships. Jung argued that we unconsciously attract people who reflect our shadow sides. Those who annoy us or evoke admiration are, in fact, mirrors of our suppressed aspects. Interacting with others is a field for self-knowledge. Watch how you react to those around you and ask yourself what this says about me. Maybe you criticize someone for their selfishness because you yourself are afraid to put yourself first, or vice versa. You admire people who follow their path because deep inside you crave the same courage. Working with the shadow is not just self-analysis, but a path to genuine freedom. The more you accept yourself, the less you have to pretend. This gives an incredible feeling of lightness. When you no longer need to spend energy on hiding certain aspects of your personality, you become truly authentic and alive. And this not only changes you, but also inspires those around you. Try to imagine that your shadow is not a dark, threatening image, but a treasure trove in which parts of you are stored, waiting to be recognized. Perhaps this is your voice, which was once suppressed, or your talent that was never developed. Integrating the shadow is not just working with traumas or fears. It is also revealing the strength, passion, and vivacity that were suppressed. When you start this dialogue with your shadow, be prepared for unexpected discoveries. Sometimes the shadow holds suppressed dreams that once seemed too daring to you. Maybe as a child you loved to draw, but someone told you it was not a real career, or maybe you were always drawn to the stage, but the fear of being ridiculed forced you to stay in the shadows. Your shadow can point to where the keys to your authenticity are hidden. Another important aspect of working with the shadow is forgiving yourself. Many people, encountering their suppressed traits, experience guilt or shame, but awareness is not a reason for self-flagellation, but an opportunity for healing. Instead of asking yourself, "Why am I like this?" try to ask, "How can I integrate this part of myself so that it works for me and not against me? How does this manifest in everyday life?" For example, if you have always suppressed your anger, trying to be a good person, then perhaps it is time to learn to express it in a healthy way through honest conversations, physical activity, or creativity. If you have rejected your ambition, considering it selfish, perhaps you should allow yourself to strive for more, without fearing the opinions of others. Integrating the shadow affects not only you, but also your relationships. When you accept your completeness, you stop expecting others to fill the void inside you. You become free from old scenarios. Stop unconsciously reproducing the same dynamics. This allows you to build healthier and more conscious connections. But perhaps the most amazing thing in this process is the freed energy. You stop wasting your energy on self-control and bans, and begin to direct it into creativity, work, relationships, and personal growth. Your true desires no longer seem like something forbidden or unattainable. And here is the main question. What if your shadow hides not your fear, but your strength? What if what you avoid is the key to your freedom? Allow yourself to look inside, because beyond the border of the familiar, not only darkness awaits you, but also the light that belongs only to you. When we think about wholeness, we often imagine something pure, perfect, and without flaws. But what if true wholeness is not the absence of shadow, but its integration? Imagine a mosaic. Each part, even that which seems uneven or imperfect, plays its role in creating a complete picture. So it is with us. Our fears, doubts, repressed emotions, and even past mistakes are all parts of our inner pattern that makes us unique. True acceptance of the shadow is not just awareness of your hidden sides, but the ability to work with them. This is like finding a common language with that part of yourself that you once rejected. This means not only recognizing your fears, but also learning to see messages in them. Not only to realize your anger or envy, but also to understand what kind of dissatisfaction they signal. Not only to face your weaknesses, but also to realize what strength they hide. When we stop fighting our shadow, we release a huge amount of energy, like a heavy backpack that we have been carrying for years without even realizing how much it weighed. This energy can be redirected into creativity, personal growth, and deep connections with people. Have you ever noticed how, after an honest conversation with yourself, or after recognizing what you have been ignoring for a long time, there is relief? This is a sign that you are moving in harmony with your shadow. Working with the shadow is not only about individual growth. It has deeper consequences. The more people become aware of and accept their shadows, the fewer projections they create in the world. Instead of seeing enemies or annoying competitors in others, we begin to understand that they only reflect back to us those parts of ourselves that we do not want to recognize. This makes us more compassionate and wiser. Jung said that the path of individuation is not only a personal matter. When one person becomes more aware, it affects the collective unconscious, the level of awareness of all society. This is why great creators, philosophers, and leaders often began their path with internal transformation. They faced their shadows and then created something that changed the world. The search for the authentic self is not just a striving for light, but a willingness to meet one's own darkness face to face. As Jung said, we do not become whole by imagining ourselves enlightened. We become whole by becoming aware of our shadow. This process requires honesty, courage, and, most importantly, a willingness to recognize in yourself what we have been hiding for years. Fears, vulnerabilities, anger, envy, doubts. But it is in this acceptance that true freedom is born. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we deprive darkness of its power over us. We stop fearing judgment because we accept ourselves as we are. Imagine that you are entering into a dialogue with your shadow, asking it what is bothering you, what is scaring you, how are you trying to protect me? This conversation can take place through diary entries, meditation, or even creativity. And the more we interact with our shadow, the better we understand our motives, reactions, and needs. We often wear masks, trying to appear strong, successful, and confident, but the stronger we suppress our shadow, the more it controls us from within. This is especially noticeable in relationships. Hidden fears and insecurities turn into jealousy, irritation, envy, and resentment. When we allow ourselves to be real, without illusions and self-deception, our relationships with others become deeper and more honest. We stop demanding from others what we do not give ourselves: acceptance, love, understanding. But working with the shadow is not only for our personal connections, it also affects our purpose. Many seek meaning outside in career, recognition, and achievements, but the true path to purpose passes through the integration of all parts of oneself. Our weaknesses can become our strongest strengths if we learn to use them for good. The stories of many great people prove this. Their pain and challenges became fuel for their creativity, struggle, and changes in the world. The shadow is not just a burden that we must carry. It is a map pointing to hidden resources. One who struggled with loneliness can become one who helps others feel accepted. One who has suffered from injustice can become a defender of truth. Our wounds carry not only pain, but also potential for transformation. Jung believed that integrating the shadow not only changes the personality, but can change the world, because when people stop projecting their fears onto others, the level of conflict decreases and understanding grows. Imagine a society in which people are aware of their shadows without fighting them from the outside. This would change the very perception of human relationships, remove part of the fear and aggression, and make the world more conscious. So what to do right now? Start with honesty with yourself. Look inside, not only at the bright sides, but also at those that you are used to hiding. What is your shadow trying to tell you? How can you use its energy for good? What steps can you take today to become a more whole person? Working with the shadow is a journey for a lifetime. It is not about getting rid of something, but about accepting, understanding, and transforming. Each step on this path brings you closer to the real you. And this is the greatest freedom, to be who you are intended to be.